we have a lot to talk about. I mean, you've got an amazing background. You've helped lead multiple companies, successful companies. Your background is also fascinating, having been in the military and having been a graduate of West Point. But maybe just to bring people to present day, tell us about where you sit now and what your company is focused on.
Sure. Thanks. I'm glad to go any which way across those experiences. But I think where I am today is I'm the CEO of ONL Therapeutics. ONL is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So our technology came out of the University of Michigan, somewhat of a classic university spin out. Our founders are retina specialists at the University of Michigan, David Esposito, discovered the relevance of this receptor on the eye, on the retina specifically, that when you block that receptor, you protect retinal cells against things like glaucoma, age-related macular degeneration. So for the last, company's almost 15 years old. I've been the CEO for a bit over 6, and we're beginning, we're in our 5th clinical trial now for the company, and we've made really good progress in making a difference in eye disease.
And in terms of your pipeline, you have, multiple, solutions or drugs that you're testing out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think what's been unique about our technology, so at the end of the day, we have called a small peptide that blocks this receptor on the eye called the FAST receptor. And across a number of common diseases of the eye, things like glaucoma, an acute condition of retinal detachment, that receptor in those stresses or diseases gets activated and triggers the death of those retinal cells. Unlike skin cells, say when a retinal cell die, you don't regenerate any of those, so you don't make any more of them. So there's a limited supply. So we've developed a drug that actually protects those retinal cells regardless of the disease. And so over time, what we've done from what David's research showed on a number of animal models, we've translated that science into humans in studies of retinal detachment, glaucoma, and age-related macular degeneration in dry form. So we've methodically gone through 3 different phase 1 trials. Those are first-in-human trials for those conditions. We now are embarking on our 2nd phase 2 study, which is really where you get a chance to prove the safety and efficacy of the product. And we're excited about this upcoming trial to start.
And I think folks are generally familiar with glaucoma. Tell us about maybe the prevalence of retinal detachment. How often do you see it in folks?
We have an orphan designation in the U.S. for retinal detachment. Typically, if you talk to most people with retinal detachment, you kind of remember maybe a boxer might have gotten one of those over time. So this is not the trauma-induced retinal detachment. Typically, it's a disease of the aging. There's several 100,000 of them every year in the U.S. Across the world, the numbers get large when you add that up. But typically, the vitreous, which holds your eye in form, as you age, gets much more watery. And as slowly the retina on the back of your eye loses grip, and almost like wallpaper kind of peeling off a wall. That's in essence what a retinal detachment is. And today's treatment is you go see a retina specialist and you get a laser procedure to, in essence, tack up the retina on the back of your eye. Our drug in that condition protects those retinal cells when the retina is detached until you have that surgery, which reattaches the retina to the eye lining to provide its nutrient source. So the hope would be, in what we saw in our trials, that by protecting those retinal cells, your eventual vision is not as severe without just having surgery alone. So the drug on top of standard of care surgery seems to improve people's ability to see post-retinal detachment.
And you have a good amount of funding backing you with notable investors. Can you tell us a little bit about your investor base and what they've been able to kind of bring to the table aside from simple financial capital?
Sure. No, great. And, we need capital to run these companies and run the trials. And so we've over time, and most recently, we closed a Series D round of financing in the fall of last year. Johnson & Johnson led that round. It was a $65 million round. And we've had across our cap table, so with Johnson & Johnson, a part of it, Novartis has been on our cap table, and then Bios Partners, a venture capital firm out of Fort Worth, led our B and C round, and they've participated and been board members throughout our journey. So they've been very supportive, not only just the financial piece, but across the board in supporting our journey. I will say we have the three leading ophthalmology-focused venture capital firms on our table. So Excite Ventures, InFocus Capital Partners, and Visionary Ventures. So what you described with regards to expertise beyond capital, those three firms have provided tremendous support for us over the years, and expertise in ophthalmology, and a number of key opinion leaders to help us with that. So we kind of think we always need capital, but it's really nice when it can come with that kind of talent and expertise to help guide our development.
Mm-hmm. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and how some of the prior companies you've led, and then how you found your way to ONL.
Sure. So you mentioned, post active duty in the military, I started off as a sales rep for Merck, so a large pharma company. And one of my first products was a product called Timolol, which is an eye drop to lower intraocular pressure for patients with glaucoma. So it gave me an initial appreciation of the importance of eye health and some of the damaging effects that these eye diseases have. Spent about 15 years at Merck, mostly sales, marketing, commercial strategy roles, and then moved into more of the early stage, mid-stage world of life science, both diagnostic and therapeutic. Through that journey, I've had a few what would maybe described as successful exits, build a company, launch product, sell it to a larger entity. I've also taken a few companies over the cliff in bankruptcy. You can't get into this early stage without skinning your knees a few times. So those experiences helped me learn and grow quite a bit on building early stage innovation. But more recently, I led a cancer diagnostics company called Immune Bioscience. It was focused on developing blood-based tests for, I'll assume, RJ, maybe whatever age you are, but my age, sometimes men like us may have an elevated PSA. We think about prostate cancer. You typically go to a urologist for that treatment. We had a blood test to help better discriminate beyond an elevated PSA, whether somebody like you or I may be at risk for prostate cancer. That company, we launched that product and ultimately sold it to Exact Sciences in Madison, Wisconsin. They have Cologuard. People may see those ads on TV. Mm-hmm. Investors in that company, Immune Bioscience, had also invested in ONL Therapeutics. And so after I exited that company, as ONL was looking for a leadership change, I got to know David Zaks, our founder, the science and the team. And 6 years ago is when I became the CEO. So it was kind of the common investors that helped bring me to ONL.
Mm-hmm. I can't help but think, I mean, the path you took from initially being a sales rep at Merck all the way to becoming a CEO, multiple time over CEO, that your experience, maybe learning some leadership skills at West Point and in the military, helped prepare you for this path to eventually lead organizations. Do you think there's an element of truth to that?
I think so. I mean, there are a lot of bright people who wrote a lot of books on kind of parallels on those things. I mean, I would say, I think definitely for me, West Point's a journey about, building leadership capabilities. So that's been really supportive for me in that journey. And I think some of those foundational leadership experiences, Merck also as a large pharma, great company to be able to build leadership, accentuated that. And I think the parallels I would kind of outline somewhat that, I was an infantryman, so follow me, do as I do. That set the example is a common leadership trait that I think I've tried to embody over the years. The other piece that's, I think, really critical for the early stage that my military experience certainly brought into is you've got to be prepared to adapt your plan to the situation in front of you. There's always a base case, a base plan, a base operating plan in my world today, but data may drive you in a direction that says the base case is no longer manageable and adjust the plan. I think those were military experiences I heard too. You learned too. You've built a plan, but boy, as soon as you get into the mix of it, sometimes you have to adjust the plan. So I think that flexibility and leadership are were I'd say common traits in my experience that helped me today that I learned as a young lieutenant in the infantry.
And kind of where do you foresee the company being? I mean, I think it's still, as you mentioned, several years away. But is there a broad vision for this company, say as it's reaching its kind of stride?
I think in the broad vision, so from a real practical standpoint, we have a vision to help patients see the future, and so we build the base case to do exactly as we described, methodically move our lead compound through various clinical programs to then seek regulatory approval to commercialize. I mean, we are building to try to do that. I think as the CEO and certainly my board and investors, we have to keep our options open as to, is that the appropriate, most capital efficient path to move all the way to commercialization, maybe an IPO in the future to be able to do that? Or is the marketplace really looking for these solutions? And so say post a phase 2 positive result, many times you see companies like ours where a bigger player says, boy, that was good results after phase 2. Maybe we want to do a deal or acquire something at that point to then orchestrate a phase 3 study. I think we at ONL keep our options open on all those fronts. At the end of the day, we've got to put points on the board of good data, and then that creates some of those opportunities down the road. I think for us, we think this technology can really make a difference in patients with eye disease, and so our real focus is just whatever is the right vehicle to do that. We want to move it as fast as we can through clinical programs.